Hello everyone and welcome back to Beyond the Veil Background Information. Today we're doing a creature profile and we're still in the sea creatures part, although we're slowly filling that out now. And we're talking about the Makara today. So like all of my creature profiles, I'll give you a quote from a story where it's mentioned, then I'll give you my background information, then I'll give you how its profile for the veil and how it lives in the veil. So let's get into it. You want to know something interesting? My father was friends at school with one of the Thai nobles. After hearing how Grandma Viper loves snakes and reptiles, they arranged to send her a gift. You know what it was? A Makara, the sacred crocodile that carries deities. Apparently he's called Raj and loves his belly being scrubbed with a broom. Apparently he turns to a human, but he's pretty chill as a crocodile. Quote from the Viper King. One of the several river and sea monsters is a being in Hindu and Thai mythology known as the Makara, often seen as one of the great vehicles that carry deities and sacred beings upon its back. The exact description of the creature is something hotly debated as to what it actually is, and there are great differences in art. The main thing to be noted, though, is that the Makara is the mount of someone important and thus is a giant creature. Now, I like that when I went looking up this being, there was not only different kinds of art but different texts discussing it. I was quite amused to see the majority have the Makara as crocodilian, although some have it more like a giant fish, and apparently one German scholar debated it might actually be based upon a dugong. So it's a fascinating creature. So the name Makara is thought to mean sea animal or crocodile in Sanskrit, and the Makara is a Vahana, the mount or vehicle for river gods as well as the god of the ocean Varuna. Due to their divine link and their connection to water, the Makara is often deemed as a guardian of gateways, throne rooms, and you might see the creature around temple carvings. In fact, it's such a common icon in Hinduism and Buddhism. Sorry, my voice is going. That it's often been described as an equivalent to the gargoyle on churches in Europe. Certainly, just like the gargoyle, their designs are different from something more crocodilian to something akin to an elephant or fish at times. Now, there are a lot of links to reptiles of these beings, some even suggesting they're linked to the dragons of Southeast Asia, but most tend to believe that they're more linked to water monitors and mugger crocodiles. However, in some art, like those of goddess Ganga, they're more like an ancient kind of fish with a scaled body and a distinctive head with a proboscis or thick nose, almost like a trunk. When you considered a dugong is related to elephants and has a big floppy mouth and the dolphin-style tail, you can see the similarity. There's also thoughts that dolphins could be part of the description, but overall the Makara is described most often as a frontal part terrestrial animal or similar to a terrestrial animal, and then behind the fish, although sometimes a peacock. One of the most interesting descriptions makes a point of it being made specifically of 7 animal parts, but that's more akin to the dragon in Chinese mythology. Either way, the Makara also appears to be an equivalent to Capricorn in Hindu zodiac. So what's the story behind this creature? Well, the Hana are mounts that gods ride around to enter into battle upon. In iconography, the being is supposed to represent or make a point of positive traits associated with the god they carry. With the Makara, there's a big point of them being related to the god of love and desire, and the Makara is said to have had jewellery shaped like it as part of wedding gifts. There's also the link with the crocodile aspect being representative of the necessary chaos before balance, and as previously said, their position within temple architecture is often deemed in the same manner, protective manner of gargoyles. There have been questions lately as to whether, as some question overall dragon-like beings in mythology, if this mythological water monster has anything to do with something that lived before. Certainly there are descriptions of its various looks that have counted it as more related to a shark than a crocodile, and in text they are often described as wild creatures that live and fight in the world, with some being tamed to become Vahana. But is there a possibility they could be linked to dinosaurs? Well, it's certainly an interesting point to bring up because it would be nice to think of them as a way for someone to describe dinosaur fossils being found, particularly if we think how the Makara is often attached to the Cetus of Greece, which some have also pointed as being a way to describe marine reptile bones found on mountains. Indeed, some of the descriptions could match for something like a mosasaur style species, and that would be a very interesting way to think about this behind. Certainly, I was inclined initially to make it as the Vale's version of the mosasaur, but its link to the gargoyles steered me aside, although it's certainly a sea monster in this time. So, its profile. Sidelight, created by the Mastema, created for protection for those in the sea and water, created by the creation of the Vale. Physical description, although they can appear in human form, they are often like gargoyles in being unusual mixes of different animals on top of some kind of aquatic aspect. Some are more akin to huge crocodiles with tails like a dolphin to fish, with a head of ball or stag. Abilities, they are guardians of the Vale and can stir up water to protect the entrances into the aquatic Vale, whether at sea or in rivers, and can transform into larger creatures, humans, or even more familiar creatures like dolphins, sharks, or crocodiles to try and steer humans away from the entrances into the Vale. Most known for protecting temples and citadels of the Water Vale landers. Weaknesses, they are mortal but only when they're transforming or in human form. So if they are chopped in half as they're transforming, they will die. But there's said to be around 1,000,000 of them, and they guard areas where currents mix and the Vale opens, or deep places where a mermaid or sea folk citadel can be spotted. There are no beings, no applicable characters and stories to be announced. Final comments. There's a lot of research and documents on this creature, so you can get a really good variety of information, whether it's to do with the art or what the bee represents. So they're certainly fascinating, but I was personally just comfortable with having them more akin to gargoyles than a more chimeric creature. So certainly check mythical creatures because they have a more interesting view on it. The same with Mythlock. I know some of them are a bit more less fact checked, but this is for basic information, really, and my understanding of it, so it's going to come from the easiest sources in some places. But anyway, thank you for listening.